I have the distinction of having the largest artifact to talk about, so hopefully you can all see it somewhat. My name is Caryn Tamber-Rosenau, and I teach Jewish Studies and Religious Studies here, and I direct our Jewish Studies program. So I'm going to talk about two things in the next 15 minutes. One of those things is the Torah as an object, a physical object. The second is a point of translation in the very well-known story of the Garden of Eden in Genesis 2. So the Torah, you can see it's a scroll, it's not a book. But it includes the first 5 books of the Bible. And the first 5 books of the Jewish and Christian Bible are identical: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Hebrew is read right to left, so we are actually all the way in Genesis 1, 2, 3, 4 over here. That's what we're looking at. So you are looking at, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth right over here, all the way at the top there. Playing on what some of my colleagues were talking about, the Bible itself is also a multi-form text, but the Torah scroll is not. All Torah scrolls everywhere in the world are identical. So the Jewish textual tradition basically stabilized this text and only has one Torah text as of certainly at latest about 1,000 years ago. But there are textual variations in ancient manuscripts, but we are dealing with a text that is, in every Torah scroll everywhere in the world, fully identical, which is a feat. It's really hard because this is not a printed book. This is handwritten. Every single Torah scroll in the world, in order to be like a valid Torah scroll, is handwritten by a specially trained scribe. It's written on parchment, so it's animal skin. And if you were to come up here later, you can see that you can see kind of the variations in the skin of the animal. And it is handwritten by a specially trained scribe in ink with like a quill. So this whole thing takes a very long time, as you might imagine. Because it all does have to be identical. Every Torah scroll has to be identical to every other Torah scroll, down to, and I know you can't see from where you are, but down to the little thingies on the top of the letters. Each letter is decorated with it's called a crown. Even the crowns of the letters have to be identical. Most synagogues, I think, in the world have at least one Torah scroll. A lot have more than one. It's not something you would have in a private home, as you can imagine, because it's something that is written over the course of maybe a whole year by a specially trained scribe. It costs a lot of money to purchase one, and typically an individual is not going to have this and just take it out. If you're Jewish and you want to study the Bible, you're going to study it in a book form, regular book form. But if you're in a synagogue and you're reading it in a ritual way, you're going to read it out of this. So the Torah is taken out depending on the synagogue, anywhere from 1 to 3 times a week. And every week you read a particular portion of the book, of the scroll. So you start in the fall, after a holiday called Simchat Torah, which means rejoicing in the Torah. After Simchat Torah, you start with Genesis 1. You start with in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and you go throughout the year, you read one piece every week, and at the end, you are in Deuteronomy, and then when you're done, can you guess what you do? What do you do? Start again. Yeah, of course. Right. You're not going to do it once. No, you're reading it every year. You're reading it again. The reading of the Torah in a synagogue is actually chanting. It's actually singing. I'm not going to demonstrate that for you because I can't do it. Although my biblical Hebrew is excellent, my sense of tune is not. And I am very bad at it, so I don't even try. Can you hear the difference between these two notes? And no, I can't, actually. I really can't. So I'm not going to afflict you with that. But people can. I just am not one of those people. So the Torah scroll itself has no vowels in it. Vowels in Hebrew are underneath or above or inside the letters, and they are not. So they are not present in here. There's also no musical notation here, so you have to memorize the vowels and memorize the musical cantillation, and then you go, and you're like, okay, I remember it, and I'm going to read it. When you read it, you don't touch it with your finger because, again, parchment, ink, all handwritten, very expensive. Instead, I'm not sure how well you can see this. It's called a yad. Yad in Hebrew means hand. I'm not sure if you can see how well. It's a hand. It's a little pointer finger. It's cute, right? And you would touch it. And when you're reading it, it's on a desk. It's not upright like this. It's like, like this. So you'd read it like this. What else I got? Okay. I'm going to talk about a particular translation issue. And it is something at the very, very beginning of the Torah. So this translation issue centers on a word that is isha. And isha can mean many different things, which is the problem, which is the translation issue. Because as anybody who translates anything will tell you, words don't have stable meanings. They have a range of possibilities, right? Words don't have meanings. They have a range of possibilities. So anybody who's bilingual, I know, I love UH. Can you raise your hand if you're bilingual? Yeah, a bunch, like half the people, right? So I love it here. If you're bilingual, you know if you have your two languages and you're trying to switch between them and you're trying to say, okay, wait, but like this thing that I'm trying to say in English, like there's no Spanish equivalent, right? Or I'm trying to say something in Vietnamese, but there's not an English equivalent to that, right? So this is the problem with translating ancient texts, except maybe magnified because they are mostly dead languages, right? So we have a problem with this word isha. So it is sometimes translated woman, and it is sometimes translated wife. And those are related words, but they're not identical, and that's where we have the problem. We do not have a separate word in Hebrew for woman and a separate word for wife. We have one word, isha, and that's it. So what do you do? When do you translate it woman? When do you translate it wife? The answers that most translators have come to, I argue, are bad. So the first place we see the word is in Genesis chapter 2, verses 22 and 23. And if you're a reader of the Bible, you will recognize, and the rib that the Lord God had taken from the Adam, I'm going to leave that untranslated for reasons, he made into an isha and brought her to the Adam. Then the Adam said, this at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one shall be called Isha, for out of Ish this one was taken. So I'm leaving some stuff untranslated here. Typically, what we do when we translate this is we say, and the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. Then the man said, this at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one shall be called woman, for out of man this one was taken. So the same relationship that you have between man and woman in English, you have between ish and isha in Hebrew. So, okay, fine. We translate it woman, the creation of the first woman from the rib of the man. Okay, fine. Then we get to the next verse, which is 2:24. It's around here. Therefore, an ish leaves his father and his mother and clings to his isha, and they become one flesh. So typically what we have that's translated as, therefore, a man leaves his father and mother and clings to his wife, and they become one flesh. But this is the same word, isha. And now we were just translating it in 22 and 23, we were translating it woman, and now we're translating it wife. Why are we doing that? We're doing that because the translators are taking our modern notions of marriage and putting them onto the text. The text doesn't say anything about marriage. We have no white dress, no I-do's, no vows, no process of marriage, nothing. We could argue that this is about sex, right? They become one flesh. It's about sex, but it's not. That doesn't necessitate marriage. We're all adults. We know this, right? So we're clearly projecting our own ideas of marriage back onto these texts. And we're projecting, not only that, an understanding of marriage when marriage hasn't been introduced yet. Like, this is the beginning of the Bible, right? This is it, folks. God's created the heavens and the earth, but God has not created marriage yet. There is no creation of marriage. There's the creation of a human, and then another human, and then they become one flesh, but, like, nothing about marriage. Now, the issue, and where this gets more than just academic, is when we use this as a justification for opposing same-sex marriage. Well, because look, like it's right there in Genesis 2. Well, the man and his wife, and therefore the man shall leave his father and mother and cling to his wife and become one flesh. It's not his wife, it's his woman, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean marriage. I would argue, and I'm certainly not the first to do this, that this is not about marriage at all. This has nothing to do with marriage. Marriage is not mentioned at all in Genesis 2 or Genesis 3. And I will also note as a kind of closing here that when you get to Genesis 3, when you get to the next chapter, we have the famous story of the serpent talking to the woman and tempting her and saying, hey, eat the fruit, and she's like, yeah, okay, looks tasty. Now, when we get to Genesis 3, we're back to Isha being translated as woman, right? These are all choices on the part of translators, and sometimes those translations, those choices are bad, and they obscure the meaning of the text rather than clarifying it. Ta-da, that's it.